On Wednesday, US President Joe Biden made an announcement. He appeared on our screens from the treaty room in the White House, the same room where President George W. Bush had declared the war in Afghanistan in the year 2001. 20 years and 4 presidents later, Biden announced that American troops will leave Afghanistan for good. Technically, he's not the first president to commit to a withdrawal. It was Donald Trump who first made a commitment to leave by the 1st of May. The 1st of May this year. Biden is just pushing that deadline by a few months, but the withdrawal is going to happen on his watch. America is ready to end its longest war. The question is, what happens next? Today I spoke to 3 leaders who are shaping the Afghan story and who will be most affected by the outcome. At the Raisina Dialogue, India's premier conference on geopolitics, we had India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif, and Afghanistan's National Security Advisor Hamdullah Mohib. Tonight on Gravitas, we are bringing you 5 key takeaways from this conversation. 1. Why is there no peace even after a peace deal? 2. Has the Taliban changed in the last 20 years? 3. Will India engage with the Taliban government in Afghanistan? 4. What happens to development projects like Chabahar? And 5. What about the role of Pakistan and its proxy wars in Afghanistan? Let's begin with the Taliban, its words and its actions. It struck a peace deal, but it continues to attack. It also refuses to participate in any dialogue. And it is blaming America for any unsavory consequences that might follow. What is the Taliban trying to do?
Hamdullah Mohib, you have a peace without any peace. And the Taliban has declared a win. America has declared a deadline for troop pullout. Where does this leave the government of Afghanistan?
I think this is a great opportunity. I see it as a time where the Afghans take full control of the security situation in our country. I have said this before on several occasions that Afghanistan doesn't need U.S. combat troops on the ground. What we need is the support to the ANDSF, which we're told and have been assured will continue. And that provides an opportunity for Afghanistan to move forward. On a big scale, in a big picture point, the Taliban have no reason to continue their violence in Afghanistan anymore. The reasons why they continued are now totally out of the picture, and I think it's time for them to make real peace with the Afghan government and become part of the mainstream political society.
So Afghanistan is confident. The civilian government believes that it can hold its ground without the help of foreign forces. What about the Taliban? Is it prepared to participate in a democratic process? Would it agree to share power in the Republic of Afghanistan, or does it still insist on leading what it calls an Islamic emirate? We asked Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif about this.
Javad Zarif, in the month of January, Iran hosted senior leaders of the Taliban to exchange views, as they put it, on the US-brokered peace negotiations. What is on the Taliban's mind? What was your assessment? Why do they continue to perpetrate violence?
Have conversations with the Taliban, first of all, for our own national security, and secondly, in order to convince them that there is a need for a broad-based peace in Afghanistan, for an inclusive peace in Afghanistan, and Taliban should be a part of that peace. Taliban should not control that peace. I believe the announcement, the commitment by the United States to finally withdraw from Afghanistan in a responsible way is a positive move. And it has to be taken in light of the realities of our region, that presence of foreign forces has never contributed to peace and stability in our region, and the removal will lead to at least less grounds for violence.
Why did Zarif mention the threat of violence? Because the risk of an escalation is real. The Taliban has promised fresh attacks if the foreign forces do not meet the deadline to withdraw. So is the Taliban just waiting for the Americans to leave before it makes its first moves? Afghanistan feels that would be a mistake.
Mohib, The Taliban has said that it will take part in any conference. It will not take part till the last foreign soldier has left Afghanistan. Do you think it's simply waiting for that September 11 deadline for President Biden's exit date to make its first moves?
There was a lot of discussion around how the Taliban have changed, and that they would be more considerate and more tolerant of others, and that they will take this as an opportunity to lead their group to a more tolerant Afghanistan. When the discussions began post that agreement, first of all, the Taliban went ahead and started a narrative of victory, which was quite off-putting for everyone in the country. The second was the international community's enthusiasm was reduced by their arrogance. And the third, all the Afghans that looked forward to engaging with the Taliban soon found out that, in fact, there is no change in the Taliban.
No change in the Taliban, he says, and that's been a subject of debate. The world saw a Taliban regime more than 20 years ago. It's a different world now. Is it also a different Taliban? Is it more in tune with the times? No, says Iran. Minister Zarif said the Taliban wants to take Afghanistan back to the 90s.
Zarif, despite everything, it seems all sides are prepared to engage with the Taliban. But we know that the Taliban is not a monolith, and that this is not the same Taliban that was once ruling Afghanistan. Do you believe that the Taliban has changed over the past 20, 25 years, and how?
I have my doubts. We believe that whatever we think of the Taliban, it is a reality in Afghanistan and they have to be engaged. But based on democratic terms, not based on anybody's individual self-serving terms. If the Taliban want to go back to the 90s, whether their ideology has changed or not, whether their approach has changed or not, but it is impossible to go back to the 90s.
Has the Taliban not changed? India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was guarded in his response to that question. What he did say very clearly, though, was that Afghanistan has certainly changed and that any agreement made now should not undo the gains made in the past.
I think what is more important is the point which Minister Zarif made, which is Afghanistan has changed and the world has changed. That, whether somebody wants to or not, you can't today in 2021 say, well, this was the world in 2001 and that's where I'd like to go back to. I grant you, we are at a crossroads today. There are tough decisions to be made, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, I think there are some very, very good things which have happened, which are important for the world to recognize, and which is important for the international community today to work to ensure that they remain very much at play.
An Afghan-led, Afghan-owned and Afghan-controlled peace process. That's how India would like to see the transition. And India has said this on many occasions. The question is, how will New Delhi enable this? By engaging constructively. The Afghan National Security Advisor told us that this morning he had a conversation with India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval.
As we prepare for this, I think this forum couldn't come at the right time, so that we can discuss or engage in a public dialogue about the way forward. But also offline, we will be talking to our partners. I spoke to Ajit Doval this morning about about our views and shared what we think should go and happen as we prepare for this dialogue.
India stakes are high. As Minister Jaishankar shared with us, India is running development projects in all 34 provinces of Afghanistan.
Dr. Jaishankar, how does India then see the security implications for the region and also for India's developmental efforts in Afghanistan?
In the last 20 years, we have demonstrated through our actions and projects on the ground what our real feelings are for Afghanistan. So we believe today that there is goodwill for us, that there is a strong Indo-Afghan friendship, And believe me, we really, really wish the people of Afghanistan well, and we will do whatever is in our power, in our influence, in relationship with other neighbors, to ensure that, what is the best interest of the Afghan people is ensured.
India's approach has met with criticism too, putting the development of Afghanistan on top, this approach. In a conversation at Stanford University this week, former US National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster spoke about the fears of Pakistan and how Islamabad needs to maintain influence in Afghanistan because it fears a strategic encirclement by India. Well, Minister Jaishankar said today that there is an attempt to create a misleading narrative around New Delhi's assistance to Kabul.
I'm getting a lot of questions from the audience, and since you mentioned a neighbor, let me take these two questions for Dr. Jaishankar. One is that does India have any intentions to open communications with the Taliban, and does it even make sense as long as the Taliban are seen as Pakistani proxies? The second question is, how will India maneuver to facilitate a long-term solution for Afghanistan, leaving behind the bilateral differences with her neighbors?
Look, what we will do and not do is not something, obviously, I'm going to discuss in public, not even at the Raisina dialogue. But the situation is evolving, and obviously everybody wants to make the best contribution that they can and shape the outcomes in Afghanistan as positively as they can. So it's something which anybody responsible would consider all aspects of that. Now, the bit about the bilateral difference, there I have an issue, okay? Because I want you to just think back in the last 20 years. What is it we've actually done in Afghanistan? Because somehow, a narrative, I was watching yesterday a program which General McMaster, the former American NSA, was doing out of Stanford University. And he says something to the effect, well, there's a Pakistani fear that the Indians are on that side and there's an encirclement of Pakistan. Let me look at my actions, okay? What do I plead guilty to? I plead guilty to bringing electricity to Kabul. I plead guilty to creating a dam near Herat and allowing agriculture, to creating a parliament in Kabul, to bringing, to doing health clinics, radio stations, building roads, networks. So look at our record.
Well, there is no doubt over India's credentials. According to one report, India has given more than $3 billion worth of assistance to Afghanistan since the year 2001, making it the largest donor in the region. Now, China, we know, is entering this game. It weaponizes development politics and projects. It uses these projects to bind countries with debt. So what are China's plans for Afghanistan? We asked this question to the Iranian minister, especially in the context of Chabahar. It's a port project in Iran, the Chabahar Port, and India has been developing it. The port opens up a key trading route for India to Afghanistan. It helps India bypass Pakistan to access Afghanistan. It also gives India an entry into Central Asia. Since February 2019, the Chabahar Port has handled 123 vessels and 1.8 million tons of bulk and general cargoes. During the pandemic, India used the very same Chabahar Port to send 75,000 tons of wheat as humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. And that should tell you how important the Chabahar Port is to Kabul. It could unlock the development of Afghanistan, but for that, the project has to survive regional politics. American sanctions against Iran slowed its development. Now, a recent deal between Iran and China threatens it. What does Tehran have to say about this? Where does Tehran stand on this matter? Listen in.
Jawad Zarif, your thoughts on the role of the neighbor that Dr. Mohib alluded to. Also, there's another neighbor in the picture. And recently, Iran announced a $400 billion deal with China, considering China's growing ties with Iran and its close relationship with Pakistan as well. Do you see Beijing trying to take a more active role to determine the fate of Afghanistan? And where does that leave projects like the Chabahar Port, which are also essential for the development of Afghanistan?
Afghanistan is a mineral-rich country. Afghanistan if we provide Afghanistan with transport and transit opportunities through Chabahar, through elsewhere, to the international markets, then what President Ghani has always called the basically the unofficial economy in Afghanistan will go away. We've made it very clear to our Indian friends, to our Chinese friends, that Chabahar is open for cooperation for everybody. Chabahar is not against China, is not against Gwadar. Chabahar is a place where we can all come together in order to help Afghanistan, to help development and prosperity in the region. India is playing an active role in Chabahar. The Chinese are interested in playing an active role elsewhere in Iran and also in Chabahar. And there is enough for a lot of people to engage, and there is enough in Afghanistan to help promote peace and stability and economic development in the entire region.
And finally, we cannot discuss the future of Afghanistan without talking about Pakistan, the country that's driving the conflict in Afghanistan, the country that has supported the Taliban and its proxies. Pakistan's support of the Taliban is no secret. According to one claim, since 2001, the ISI's proxy war has killed more than 124,000 people in Afghanistan, killed. Islamabad, or should I say Rawalpindi's influence with the Taliban, is the reason why Pakistan has a seat at the table. It's also the reason why Afghanistan and India are wary of Pakistan's intentions. Without naming Pakistan, Minister Jaishankar said foreign fighters need to leave Afghanistan. And the Afghan National Security Advisor agreed. He said the blame would fall squarely on one party for any escalation in violence.
I think Minister Jaishankar referred to something very important. It's not just the withdrawal of foreign troops from Afghanistan, it's also the withdrawal of foreign fighters from Afghanistan, which the Taliban are working closely with and who are involved in destructive activities in our country and will continue terrorism, and that will remain a threat to the region. And I think the last 18 months made one thing abundantly clear. Was all that had been said about support to the Taliban from our neighbors. Their visits to their bases, their visits to their injured soldiers or fighters, rather, and their abundant discussions and had made it very clear all that was alleged before. It was a reality, but it wasn't clearly seen, has become a clear reality now. Any further push would mean that there is direct involvement in Afghanistan by a neighbor, which could be very dangerous. The nationalistic forces in Afghanistan are very upset and angry over this, and if this limit is passed, I think there would be a huge problems for the said neighbor in their country by all Afghans who are there and from within Afghanistan. There could be a huge blowback effect that I think could be destructive for these neighbors.
A huge blowback effect for the neighbor. Well, I don't think I need to tell you which neighbor was being talked about here. And with those words, Kabul has also sent a warning to Islamabad that if it attempts an escalation through the proxies, there will be a fierce pushback. India shares similar worries. Minister Jaishankar was quite vocal about New Delhi's concerns over Islamabad's role. He said that any solution must be backed up by all neighbors and not just a single party that likes to talk with force.
The foreign fighters, if my memory serves me right, there was a UN report on foreign fighters in Afghanistan. Dr. Mohib or Dr. Zarif could correct me. I think they estimated them at 8,000 or 9,000 or something like that at the beginning of this year. Look at the history of Afghanistan. The neighbors of Afghanistan, unfortunately, have very often played a very negative role. So, which is the point, therefore, I had made in Dushanbe, that Afghanistan needs a double peace. It needs a peace within, it needs a peace around, without. And unless you have both, the neighbors also need to lay off Afghanistan and let the Afghan people do what is in their best interest.
The most obvious question now is what's next in the withdrawal process? And going by what the Afghan NSA told us, Kabul is now going to put together a team, and this team will engage with American and NATO troops to chalk out the specifics of the withdrawal. Afghanistan's neighbors will be watching closely because this is a development that impacts all of us. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.